I swear to you, my heart stopped before I had time to breathe. Not paused, not fluttered. Stopped like someone pressed a finger to its throat and whispered, "No more." I was slicing mangoes in the kitchen, humming some lazy tune from the radio, still in my robe because it was Sunday, and Sundays were the one quiet thing I had left in life. The knife was steady in my hand, the pieces neat. I remember that detail because it's the last moment of normalcy I have. Everything after that became a trembling, collapsing memory. The front door opened gently, and at first I didn't even look. I thought it was just her, my niece, my girl, my miracle I raised like my own after my sister died of a stroke. She always came home loud, careless, shoes thumping against the wood, shouting, "Auntie, I'm here," before even seeing if I was alive. But this time, she was quiet. Quiet is dangerous. Quiet means she's planning something. So when she stepped into the kitchen doorway, I already felt the tension crawling up my spine like a storm warning. Then she said, all sunlight in her cheeks, "Auntie, I want you to meet someone." You know when your brain knows something you don't? When a future catastrophe slithers under your skin before your eyes even catch up? That's what happened. Because behind her, stepping into the frame of the doorway like a shadow becoming flesh, was him. I didn't say his name. My mouth didn't even try. I just dropped the mango. It hit the floor with a wet, stupid sound, orange against tile like a crime scene in fruit form. He didn't move. Neither did I. We stared at each other like two people spotting a ghost and realizing the ghost is you. His face didn't age, if anything it got sharper, jaw more defined, eyes colder, hair shorter, the kind of maturity that doesn't come from birthdays but from mistakes you bury so deep you pretend they never happened. It wasn't some random man. It wasn't the boy next door. It wasn't a stranger. It was the one person I promised myself I would never see again, the one I met that night, the night that split my life into before and after. I took a breath, but it came out wrong. My lungs trembled. My fingers shook so badly I had to put the knife down or risk slicing myself open. "Are you okay, Auntie?" My niece's voice was sweet, oblivious, all soft confidence. She didn't understand what earthquakes look like on a woman's face because she never saw mine before that moment. I forced my lips to move. I'm fine. The mango slipped. She giggled. The boy didn't. He just watched me, studied me, measured how much I remembered, how much I'd pretend to forget. And I could see in his eyes, he remembered everything. Everything. The hotel, the rain, the way we didn't ask names, the way our bodies felt like a confession spoken in a foreign language, the way we walked away like strangers trying to protect the memory by abandoning it. And now that memory had walked into my kitchen holding my niece's hand. She pulled him forward, proud like a child showing off a trophy. "This is him," she said, beaming. "The guy I told you about. His name is—" I interrupted without thinking. My instincts gave me no time to rehearse. "I know." The room went silent. My niece blinked, confused. "You already met?" I could feel him looking at me, begging silently, "Please don't say more," while his expression stayed perfectly neutral. He was more composed than me, more adult, more prepared. That scared me most. He extended his hand politely, as if our past hadn't already tied our wrists together. "Nice to meet you, ma'am." "Ma'am." He called me ma'am. Oh, the audacity of that word. I didn't shake his hand. Not yet. Because touching him again, even something as simple as fingers brushing, felt like taking a match to a locked room full of gasoline. My niece frowned. "Auntie, why are you shaking?" I lied. The way adults lie when they're trying to save a child from a truth with teeth. "It's just the cold," I whispered. But there was no cold. The kitchen was warm, full of sunlight. The cold was inside me. The cold was him. He sat at the small table, letting her chatter fill the air like she always did. He listened to her like every word was gold. He laughed at her jokes, touched her arm, kissed her cheek, acted like the kind of man every mother would pray her daughter marries. And I watched. I watched the man I once shared a night with, a night that was supposed to be forgotten, hold the girl I raised from infancy like she was the safest place he'd ever been. Do you know what it feels like to choke on a memory? Not because of shame, but because of the question, what if it meant something to him too? He glanced at me once when she wasn't looking. Only once. But that look carried 1,000 silent words. "You're not crazy. You remember. So do I. Don't ruin this." I shouldn't have felt anything. Not fear, not desire, not guilt, but emotions don't respond to what you should feel. They respond to the parts of you you're terrified to admit exist. I could barely taste the dinner I cooked. I could barely breathe. I kept telling myself, you are her aunt, her guardian, the woman who raised her. You cannot break her life over one night, but memories don't go away because you tell them to. They wait, they rot, they whisper, and sometimes they walk back into your life wearing your niece's lipstick on their collar. I smiled when they left that night, kissed her forehead, wished them a safe drive, pretended my world wasn't collapsing, but when the door shut behind them, I leaned against it, slid down slowly to the floor, and finally let myself shake. Not because of guilt, not because of regret, but because I knew something she didn't. That night wasn't an accident, and it was never finished. I didn't plan to sleep with anyone that night. I didn't even plan to speak to anyone. I was 32, exhausted, freshly convinced that adulthood was nothing but responsibility with no applause. It was my birthday, and I spent it like a sad cliché, alone. My friends had called earlier, offered dinner plans, drinks, laughter. I turned them all down, pretended I needed rest. The truth was uglier. I didn't want to be seen. Grief gnaws in different ways. For some people, it makes them loud. For me, it made me invisible. My sister had died 6 months earlier. A stroke at 35, unfair, fast, merciless. She left behind a baby girl and a life full of unfinished sentences. And suddenly, I was the aunt who became a mother overnight, holding a child who cried like she understood everything she lost. That night, I walked into the hotel not because I was traveling, but because I was looking for somewhere I didn't have to pretend to be strong. Hotels are strange sanctuaries. Everyone there is just passing through. Everyone carries secrets like luggage they never unpack. I ordered a drink I'd never tried before, something with passion fruit and bitterness. It matched me. That's when he slid onto the stool next to me. Not aggressively, not flirtatiously, just quietly, like someone who didn't want to be alone either. He looked young enough to be reckless, old enough to be dangerous. He was dressed in a simple black shirt, sleeves rolled, collar slightly open, no jewelry, no arrogance. His presence was deceptively calm, like a lake that hides its depth. He glanced at me once, took in the drink, the tired posture, the way I stared into nothing. "Long day," he said. I didn't answer. I just laughed, quietly, ugly. The kind of laugh you use to keep from crying. He didn't push, he didn't flirt. He just sat there with the patience of someone who knew what silence cost. Minutes passed. The music hummed low, pulsing through the lounge. People chatted, clinked glasses, flirted. We were plain and invisible among them. When he spoke again, he didn't ask for my name. He asked, "Who did you lose?" Not if I lost someone. Not what's wrong with you. Just who. Something inside me cracked. I didn't even ask how he knew. Grief recognizes grief, that's all. "My sister," I whispered. He nodded, slow, like he was giving me permission to breathe. He told me he'd lost someone too. A mother. Cancer. Years of watching, hoping, failing, bargaining. I didn't cry. I didn't touch him. But in that moment, he was the only human being in the world who didn't require me to be strong. We talked about nothing and everything, not in a romantic way, in the way two shipwreck survivors talk while drifting on the same piece of wood. We laughed about stupid things, shared stories that weren't polished for social media, just raw truths, embarrassing, human, messy. I remember the hotel lighting, warm, amber, dim, like the world was apologizing for being cruel. I told him I was tired, not physically, tired of being brave, tired of smiling at the girl upstairs who would grow up thinking I was the one who failed her if I ever slipped. He listened, really listened, not like people who wait for their turn to speak. Hours passed, the bartender disappeared, the lounge emptied. It was just us and the soft hum of an air conditioner working too hard. He rested his elbow on the bar, leaned closer, but not in a predatory way. It was an invitation. If you want to talk, you can. If you want to stop, I will. If you want to walk away, I'll let you. I don't know when my hand touched his. I don't know who moved first. Maybe we both did. What I do remember is the jolt, not electric, but terrifying, a reminder that I was alive. Sometimes grief makes you forget that. He didn't ask my age. I didn't ask his. We didn't exchange last names. We just walked together down the hallway to a room that smelled like new carpet and expensive soap. There was no nervousness, no guilt, just two people who were tired of pretending. We undressed without ceremony, not lust, not hunger, a quiet unwrapping of armor. His hands were warm, steady, kind, gentle, almost reverent. He kissed me like he was saying thank you and I'm sorry at the same time. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. It wasn't wild. It wasn't sinful. It was desperate. The desperate tenderness of people who don't expect to survive their sadness. Afterward, he lay on his back staring at the ceiling. I curled against him, feeling small, maybe safe. He whispered, "You don't owe anyone strength." That sentence undid me, completely. Men before him offered compliments or desire, never mercy. I fell asleep with my cheek on his chest. For the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. When I woke up, the bed was still warm. The window was cracked open, curtains trembling. He was gone. No note, no number, no name, just silence. I remember standing in that room, staring at the empty pillow, hands shaking, not because I was heartbroken, but because I knew that night was a thing that could never exist again. A secret you bury to survive. I walked out, hair messy, lipstick smudged, clothes wrinkled. I didn't look back. I told myself he would fade. He didn't. For years he lived only in the quiet corners of my memory, in the spaces where pain and comfort look identical. Then he walked into my kitchen holding my niece's hand, and when our eyes met that Sunday morning, I realized something that made my stomach twist. He never left the room that night. I did. He stayed. He remembered. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the house quiet, listening to every creak of the beams like they were warnings. Wind pressed against the windows like a hand trying to get in. The kitchen still smelled faintly of mango and nerves. I kept replaying the scene. His face, her smile, the way his voice said ma'am like it was a shield. That tiny flicker in his eyes, recognition and dread braided together. I knew what was coming next. Because nothing from the past ever returns politely. It returns hungry. My niece, my girl, the child I bottle-fed through fevers and nightmares, had never brought home a boyfriend before. She'd talked about boys, yes, she'd cried over them, but she had never looked at any of them the way she looked at him, and it terrified me, because it wasn't puppy love, it wasn't infatuation, it was devotion, like someone had reached into her chest and rewired her heart. She woke early the next morning, humming in the shower. I could hear her through the thin bathroom walls, singing off-key, rinsing her hair, unaware that the world under her feet had already cracked open. When she came to the kitchen, she was glowing. "You like him, right?" she asked. No greeting, no small talk, just straight into the thing clawing at her mind. I lied the way adults lie to protect children from the avalanche they don't see coming. "He seems nice," I said. She exhaled with relief. So pure, so unguarded it physically hurt me. "I knew you'd like him," she mumbled, sipping tea. She didn't notice how tight my grip was on my mug. She didn't see my eyes tracking every word. "His name is Elias," she said, as if introducing me to a prayer. The name landed on my tongue like a blade. Elias. The night had been nameless, faceless, blameless, and now it had a name. She gave me details I didn't want. How they met at university, how he'd been quiet at first, how he listened to her, how he understood things no one else did. The same qualities that seduced me in the hotel bar. I heard the echo and wanted to scream, but I smiled, because what else could I do? Over the next weeks, he became a fixture. He came to dinners, he helped fix the leaky faucet. He carried groceries, he asked about my work, he stayed late to help her study. He was immaculate, not a single flaw in sight. That alone was a flaw. Men do not arrive in your life perfectly tailored unless they are hiding something sharp underneath. Every time he visited, I watched him. I studied his body language with her versus with me. With her, relaxed, patient, charming, a little reserved. With me, composed, strategic, almost respectful to the point of warning. Like he was telling me, "We both know what we know. Let's not detonate it." I tried to be grateful. Maybe the right thing was to let the past stay buried. Maybe I should have prayed that they would marry, have children, live some fairy tale life, but I couldn't. Something was off. The first crack appeared during dinner. They'd been together 4 months by then. I made stew, rice, roasted potatoes. The table looked like a feast because I was trying too hard not to think about him. My niece was telling me about a professor she hated. Elias listened, smiling in the right places, nodding with impeccable timing. Then she said, "I'm thinking of dropping that class, it's stressing me." He didn't even look at her when he responded. "No, you're not." She laughed, thinking it was a joke, but I saw it. the flicker in his voice, the tone that wasn't suggestion, it was instruction. She tried to brush it off. No, seriously. It's no, he said again, still soft, still polite, but edged with steel. You need that course for your lab rotation. Dropping it would waste a year. My niece froze. For the first time I saw doubt cross her face. She swallowed, eyes flicking between him and me. What I need, she said slowly, is to breathe. Elias looked up then, finally, and his smile was perfectly symmetrical, a smile that said, I already thought this through before you did. You're emotional, he said. Not cruel, not angry, just certain. She went silent. I didn't intervene. I watched. Because sometimes the worst truths reveal themselves when you stay quiet long enough. That night, after he left, she came into my room. Her eyes were red, not from tears, from overthinking. Is it normal, she whispered, for someone to know better than you? God, what a question. What a trap. I wanted to scream no, throw her into the car, and drive away until the past dissolved behind us. But I forced myself to breathe. Love isn't supposed to feel like being managed, I said. She stared at the floor. He just wants what's best for me. There it was, the most dangerous sentence a woman can learn. I couldn't push too hard. A single wrong move, and she'd defend him more fiercely. That's how emotional bonds work. Pressure turns them into chains. So I nodded, kissed her forehead, and told her to sleep. But I didn't sleep. I waited. Because the worst part was still coming. It came on a quiet Thursday. The house was empty. My niece was at class. I found Elias in the garage. He'd arrived early, waiting, leaning against the wall like a man who owned all the time in the world. He raised his eyes when I stepped in. No fear, no awkwardness, just acknowledgement. The way soldiers acknowledge other soldiers after a battle they never talk about. I opened my mouth first. We need to talk. He tilted his head. About the night, he asked. No hesitation. No denial. No apology. Just a question. Yes, I said. He looked me in the eye, calm. Which part? My pulse roared in my ears. The part where you disappeared, I snapped. The part where you left without a word. The part where you pretended it didn't exist. His expression didn't change. You walked away first. The words struck like a slap. I didn't even remember leaving first. I remembered waking up to emptiness and assuming the worst. Why are you here? I demanded. He shrugged, slow. I love her. I laughed. Bitter, broken, involuntary. You don't know what love is. He stepped closer. I know what pain is, he said, and I know what staying means. He was too close now. I could smell his cologne, faint citrus, sharp, masculine, the same scent from that hotel room. You think this can work? I whispered. He leaned in. Only if you don't ruin it. His words carried no threat, which made them terrifying. Before I could respond, the garage door opened. My niece walked in, smiling wide, arms full of groceries. Eli. She froze when she saw us standing too close. Just like scene 1, time slowed. She couldn't interpret the silence, but she could smell it like smoke after a fire. Auntie, she asked softly. I stepped back, hands shaking. We were talking. Eli reached for her bags, calm and warm, like nothing had happened. I was helping, he said, and she believed him. Of course she did. Why wouldn't she? I raised her to see the good in people. I never taught her what predators look like when they smile. I wish the story stopped there. I wish it was only tension, confusion, coincidence. But it didn't stop. It escalated. It darkened. Because the universe is cruel in ways we don't expect. It gives you warnings you ignore, and then it gives you proof you can't. I didn't see it coming. Not the fight. Not the explosion. Not the small, microscopic shifts that accumulate until everything collapses under their weight. I thought the fracture would appear in a dramatic moment, a screaming match, a slammed door, a confession. But real breaking never happens like that. Real breaking is slow, it's silent, it's the drip that becomes a flood when you finally look up. It started with the family gathering. I hadn't planned to invite Elias at all. It was supposed to be a simple evening. My niece, me, and a few cousins who hadn't seen her since she was little. Just laughter, food, harmless gossip, the normalcy we needed. But she insisted. He should meet them, she said. Her voice held that brittle edge I'd begun to recognize, the edge of someone convinced of stability because they're terrified of instability. I agreed. I always agree when she asks, a habit formed in motherhood. Say yes when you can. Say no only when necessary. Only this time, my yes was the seed of the storm. He arrived early, always early, as if time bowed for him, as if lateness would suggest vulnerability. He walked in with flowers, lilies, the ones my sister used to buy. My niece smiled so brightly it was almost painful. "She loves lilies," she said, placing them in a vase. Elias turned to me. "Do you like them?" he asked. He didn't mean the flowers, he meant the performance, the presentation, the illusion of safety. I forced a polite nod. "They're lovely." He held my gaze a second too long, like he was checking if I meant it, or simply observing how much I could swallow. The cousins came, loud, chaotic, full of stories. They filled the living room with laughter and music. My niece glowed in the center of it all. Then the spotlight shifted. "Elias," Cousin Martha exclaimed, "the mysterious boyfriend. Sit, tell us about yourself." She pulled him into the circle like a prize. He played his role flawlessly, where he studied, why he chose biology, how he wanted to work in medical research. Every answer crisp, thoughtful, humble. The room adored him within minutes. One cousin whispered, "You lucked out, girl," to my niece. Another muttered, "Men raised right, rare these days." I watched him soak in their admiration carefully, like someone collecting currency. Then my cousin Paul asked something benign. "So, what does your family do?" Innocent question, common, casual, but Elias's smile didn't falter. It dimmed. "My father travels a lot," he said. "He's not around much." "And your mother?" somebody added. Silence. A full second. 2. "My mother passed away," he said, voice soft, eyes lowered. The table softened with sympathy. Hands touched shoulders, expressions tilted into compassion. My niece squeezed his arm, but something in that moment struck a nerve inside me, the way he said it. Not the sadness, the precision, like he had practiced the answer, like the words had been rehearsed until they sounded human. I felt the cold in my spine again. Dinner continued. Wine opened. Stories flowed. Elias asked questions about people's careers, their hobbies, their goals. He complimented their achievements. He laughed at every joke. He was perfect, too perfect. At one point, Cousin Martha leaned over to me and whispered, "If I were 15 years younger, I'd steal him." I smiled and pretended to enjoy the joke, but all I felt was dread. Near midnight, after everyone left, something strange happened. My niece went upstairs to shower. Elias offered to wash the dishes. I said no, not because I didn't want help, but because something in me needed to see him alone, untouched by her aura. We stood in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by dirty plates and leftover food. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes amused. "You're quiet tonight," he said. "I'm watching." "And what do you see?" he asked, not afraid. "Someone who wants to be loved by everyone in the room." He smiled. "Is that a crime?" "No," I said, "but it's rarely honest." He chuckled at that, not the laugh of a guilty man, but of someone who found the accusation naive. I washed a plate slowly, deliberately. He walked behind me, close enough that I felt his breath on my neck. "Don't worry," he murmured. "I'm not here to ruin her life." I set the dish down. "Then what are you here for?" He leaned in, to give it direction. I stiffened. He placed a hand lightly on my shoulder, not enough to push, not enough to hold, just enough to remind me of that night. "Everyone needs purpose," he said, "and she drifts." I turned, anger cracking through my composure. "She's young, she's allowed to drift." He held my gaze, calm, unblinking. "You didn't drift. You collapsed." I inhaled sharply. He'd said it gently, but cruelty whispered behind the softness. "How do you know that?" He tilted his head. "The same way you knew I lost someone. Pain recognizes itself." A door closed upstairs. Shower shut off. He stepped back, mask sliding into place, voice warm and polite. "You should rest. Long day." He left me there, hands trembling over the sink, the water running too hot. He had just exposed something. He didn't want my niece. He wanted control. Not through force, but through threadwork. Delicate, invisible, slowly tightening. I thought the nightmare would end there, that I could intervene, talk to her, pull her out gently before the hook set deep. But fate doesn't care about your plans. Because the next morning, my niece woke early, eyes swollen from tears. "I need to talk to you," she whispered. I braced for confession. A breakup, something small, something fixable. Instead, she said, "Auntie, I don't think I'm the one he wants." I froze. "What do you mean?" She bit her lip. You know how people get when they're in love? They obsess, they talk about you, they plan with you. She shook her head. He doesn't do that. Then what does he do? She stared at the floor. He studies me. Her words sliced through me, like a knife, like a truth I had been trying not to look at. He looks at me like I'm a decision he made, she whispered. Not a choice. I opened my mouth to comfort her, to say you're imagining it, you're overthinking, love is strange at first. But I couldn't, because she was telling the truth. She was seeing what I saw, what I felt on my skin that night in the garage. I reached for her hand. Honey. She pulled back, and she said something that turned my blood into ice. He talks to me like he already knows how our story ends. She stood up suddenly. I have to go. He's waiting. Waiting. Always waiting. Like the world was a chessboard and she was a pawn already in motion. She rushed out the door. I sat there, numb, shaking, feeling something old and painful claw up my throat. And for the first time since Elias entered our lives, I wished the hotel night had been the worst part of the story. I prayed that the past was the danger, because the alternative, that the danger was the future, was far, far worse. I kept telling myself it was paranoia, that all of it, the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to her, the way he navigated the house like he'd lived there, was simply my guilt rewriting reality. I wanted to believe that. I fought to believe that. But there are moments life gives you where belief becomes irrelevant. Moments that rip the floor from under you so completely that all you can do is fall and pray the landing kills you. That moment came on a rain-choked night. My niece called me at 9 p.m. I was in bed, reading a book I wasn't absorbing, pretending that normalcy was possible. Her voice was shaky, too shaky. Auntie, can I come home? Yes, of course. What's wrong? I'll explain when I get there. Do you want me to pick you up? No, I'm already in a cab. Her tone was clipped, as if she had pressed her hand over her own breathing. I knew she was trying not to cry. That terrified me more than tears, because my niece only hid her emotion when she thought she was protecting someone, and right now, I didn't know who she thought she was protecting. She arrived 30 minutes later, cheeks wet, hair damp from the storm. She stepped inside, shut the door like someone escaping a burning house, and leaned her back against it, eyes wide, gasping. He followed me, she breathed. My heart stopped. Who? She stared at me like I was the slowest woman alive. Elias. Of course. Who else? I led her to the kitchen, put tea in her hands, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders like I had when she was 10, and afraid of thunderstorms. She didn't speak at first, just trembled. Then she exhaled a shaky breath. He said I shouldn't skip class, that my future was too important to risk on emotion. That wasn't the shocking part. He'd said similar things before, controlling, polished, dressed up as concern. What broke her voice was what came next. He knew exactly where I was, she whispered. He described the cafe. He described the books on my table. He said he just happened to pass by. I swallowed hard. How did he know? She shook her head. I don't know. I didn't post anything. I didn't tell him. I didn't even know I was going until I got there. I placed a hand on her arm. Maybe it was chance. She snapped her gaze toward me, sharp, angry, wounded. Stop trying to make excuses for him. I recoiled, because she had never spoken to me like that. Tears spilled again. I'm sorry, I just... She buried her face in her hands. I can't breathe around him anymore. Those words. They weren't the product of confusion. They were the language of someone trapped. I held her as she sobbed, rubbing circles into her back the way I had when she was a baby. She kept mumbling. I don't know what I did, why he's like this. I didn't do anything wrong. Guilt. The most effective leash. Control that doesn't feel like control. Not I did something terrible, but I failed him. Predators teach that lesson early, and she had learned it too well. When she finally fell asleep, I tucked her into bed. Then I walked back downstairs, and I did something I hadn't done since the night he first walked into my kitchen. I went looking for the knife. Not because I planned to use it. Not because I wanted violence, but because my hands needed to feel something sharp. They needed to remember they had power. I found it. Still in the drawer, still silver, still clean. I rested my fingertips on the blade until I felt that faint burning pressure. Only then could I breathe. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No greeting, no explanation, just 2 sentences. We should talk. You remember more than you admit. My hands froze. I didn't reply. I didn't dare. Because that wasn't a threat. It was a reminder, a promise, a statement of ownership. For a week, he didn't show up. No calls, no visits, no gifts, no messages. My niece relaxed in tiny increments, her shoulders lowered, her appetite returned. She laughed again, tentative, like a child learning to walk. She thought distance meant freedom. But people like Elias, distance is only a strategy. It's the inhale before the strike. The strike came on a Saturday. She had gone to meet her friends at a study lounge in the city. I was alone, cooking, half watching television to drown my thoughts. The doorbell rang. I didn't check the peephole, I just opened. And there he was, not smiling, not charming, not nervous, just calm, like a man who had already rehearsed everything he came to say. He stepped inside uninvited. I didn't stop him, because fear makes cowards of everyone, especially people who once believed they were strong. He walked into the living room and sat on the couch, legs relaxed, hands folded, as if he were a guest in his own home. "Where is she?" he asked. I resisted the urge to lie. "She's out," he hummed thoughtfully. "When will she be back?" "I don't know." He looked at me the way a chess player studies the board, not the opponent. "You do," he said softly. "You just don't want me to." I sat opposite him. "I want you to leave." He tilted his head. "Why?" "Because you're scaring her." He blinked slowly. "That was never my intention." He said it gently, and yet every syllable felt like fingers tightening around my throat. "So stop following her," I demanded. "Stop showing up. Just stop." He leaned back, sighing as if I were a stubborn child. "That's not how relationships work. What you're doing isn't a relationship." His eyes sharpened. "Just a fraction." "It is if she thinks it is." I stiffened. He noticed, and smiled. He rose from the couch, slow, patient, and walked to the bookshelf. He didn't look at the books. He looked at the little framed photo resting between them. My niece at 13, gap-toothed smile on her first school trip. He picked it up with the same care someone uses to handle explosives. "I have never met someone so promising," he murmured. "Promising," I repeated. "Not lovable, not beautiful, not kind." He didn't turn around. "Potential," he said. "That's what matters." I felt sick. He set the photo down and finally looked at me. "Do you know what it's like," he asked, "to meet someone and think, yes, this is the person I will build my world around?" I froze. Because I did know. I knew too well. It was the same thought I had the night in the hotel hallway, the same dangerous spark. But I had walked away. He never did. I forced myself to speak. "Elias, you don't love her." He nodded slowly. "You're right." He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't embarrassed. He was simply clarifying. "I don't love her," he repeated. "I invest in her." I tasted iron at the back of my tongue. "Does she know that?" "She will," he said, "when she's ready." I stood up. "No, you're done. You don't get to mold her. You don't get to claim her. You don't get to take the life I spent years holding together and dismantle it for your ego." He finally smiled. A real smile. Small, sharp, victorious. "You act," he said softly, "like she was yours first." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because buried under the rage, under the fear, under the righteous maternal fury, was a truth so ugly I had never dared to name it. She wasn't mine. She was my sister's. The sister who died young. The sister whose loss sent me to the hotel bar. The sister whose death left a hollow big enough for a stranger to slip inside. And the stranger I chose for comfort that night was sitting in my living room, claiming my niece as his future. Then he asked the question that shattered the floor. "Do you ever wonder," he said, voice a whisper, "what your sister would think if she knew you slept with her daughter's boyfriend?" I stopped breathing. Because he wasn't guessing. He wasn't speculating. He knew. Not just about me, about my sister. About everything. The room tilted. Words scraped out of my throat like broken glass. "How do you know?" he interrupted, gentle as a knife through silk. "You weren't the only one grieving." He stepped toward me, eyes full of something dark and unreadable. "Your niece wasn't the only person she left behind." I staggered backward. "What are you saying?" He stepped closer. "I knew your sister." The world went silent. Not metaphorically, literally. I didn't hear the rain. I didn't hear my heart. I didn't hear the air. Only the echo of that sentence. "I knew your sister." He reached into his coat and pulled out something small, something old, something I had seen before but couldn't place, a silver keychain, worn, scratched, with a tiny seashell encased in resin. My sister's. She carried it everywhere. Hospital visits, doctor appointments, tutoring, gigs, dates. I remembered her once laughing and saying, "If a man can't find me at my worst, he doesn't deserve to see me at my best." I stared at that seashell keychain, and I understood. He didn't enter my life by accident. He didn't fall for my niece by chance. He didn't meet me in a hotel because of grief. He had been orbiting us long before that. And then he whispered the words that turned fear into horror. "You weren't the first." When people describe shock, they always get it wrong. They talk about screaming, collapsing, fainting, rage, chaos. But real shock is quiet. It's a frozen kind of clarity, like your brain decides, we can only process one thing, so everything else must die. And in that living room, staring at Elias holding my dead sister's keychain, everything else died. The world became a tunnel, him, that seashell, my niece's face in every age, baby, toddler, teenager, woman, and the realization that the man sitting in front of me had not just walked into our lives, he had been circling us, orbiting us, watching, waiting. "Explain," I whispered. "Explain," I whispered. My voice sounded like someone else speaking through me. Elias didn't flinch. He held the keychain in the open palm of his hand, as if it weighed nothing. "This was hers," he said calmly. "I know that," I snapped, sharp, desperate. "How did you get it?" He looked at it with a softness I had never seen from him. "She gave it to me." The words were almost tender. Almost. My stomach twisted. "You're lying." He didn't argue. He just sat back on the couch, like a man settling into a chair before reading a long story. "You weren't the only one grieving," he said again. "I met her first. My sister. The woman who raised me as much as I raised her. The woman who always chose stupid, flashy, unreliable men, musicians, motorbike mechanics, dreamers who never woke up. But Elias was not any of those. He was composed, educated, controlled." "What do you mean?" I demanded. He traced a finger over the shell in the keychain. "She tutored me. 2 years before she died. My knees weakened. Tutoring. My sister had always picked up side jobs tutoring students who couldn't afford formal coaching. I was 16, he continued, voice slow, deliberate, angry, lost. My father was absent. My mother was dying." His tone didn't waver, but the air around him thickened. "She didn't treat me like a child. She saw me." He smiled faintly. "She understood me." Those words, "she saw me," I had heard them before. They were the same words he used on my niece. The same words he threw at me in the hotel room, disguised as empathy. Suddenly I saw the pattern. He didn't love people. He consumed them. He found the wounded ones, the drifting ones, the half-built ones, and wrapped himself around their cracks until they mistook him for structure. I paced. I couldn't stay still. My body needed motion or I would tear my own skin off. "So you—" "What? Fell in love with her?" He shook his head. "No." That answer hit harder than a yes. "I admired her," he said. "She was brilliant, gentle, loyal to the people she loved. And you—" My voice cracked. "You were a teenager. She would never—" "She didn't," he interrupted, calm. "She would never betray you, or your parents, or her principles." He closed his fist slowly around the keychain, "But when she died, she left me unfinished." The room tilted. Unfinished. Not unhealed, not grieving. Unfinished. Like she had been a project, a blueprint, not a human. You can't be doing this to my niece because of my sister," I said. He finally looked at me properly. Not angry, not cruel, just honest. "I'm doing this because people with potential should never be wasted by weak circumstances." My voice was barely a whisper. "You're talking about her like she's property." He tilted his head. "Property is passive. Tools don't speak. Pets don't grow." A slow smile. "She is investment." I took a step forward. "You are sick." He shrugged. "Everyone is sick. I'm just productive about it." The door opened. A gust of night air swept in, carrying dampness and electricity. My niece stood there, frozen in the doorway, clutching a backpack to her chest. She must have seen his car outside, or maybe she knew, instinctively, that things were about to break. Elias didn't turn. He didn't need to. "Come in," he said gently. And she obeyed. I will never forgive that moment. Not because she listened to him, but because of the look she gave me as she walked, a look that asked, "Why didn't you protect me sooner?" She set her bag down like a child leaving her shoes outside the door. "Auntie," she whispered, "what's going on?" I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Because how do you tell someone, the man you love once tried to rebuild his dead fantasy using the pieces of our family? How do you say, you are not his girlfriend, you are the ghost of the woman he lost? I looked at Elias. He watched me, not daring me, not threatening me, inviting me. "Tell her," his eyes said. "Say it, and watch what she becomes." My niece walked past me slowly and stood in front of him. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She looked like a woman in the seconds before she discovers whether the door she's about to open leads to a dream or a grave. "Is it true?" she asked. Elias took her hands in his, very gently, like a surgeon. "I met your mother before either of us were ready," he said. "She helped me survive. I helped her dream." Her eyes trembled. "You were together?" "No," he said softly. She respected lines. I respected timing. My niece swallowed. "So why me?" He lifted her hand, kissed her knuckles. "Because you carry everything she couldn't finish." I watched her soul fracture in real time, a beautiful girl shattered by words wrapped in silk. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, I'm not her. I'm not a second attempt." "You're not," he agreed. "You're the answer." The living room blurred. I moved without thinking, grabbed her arm, pulled her behind me. "Get out," I spat. He looked at me with mild disappointment. Always so dramatic. Then he reached into his coat pocket again. I lunged forward, terrified, but he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a paper envelope, cream-colored, old, folded edges soft from handling. He held it out. "For you," he said. I didn't take it. He placed it calmly on the coffee table. "For when you're ready." He straightened his jacket. "I'll be waiting outside. She needs time to digest her inheritance." He walked out, closed the door softly, as if leaving a dinner party early. My niece collapsed, not onto the couch, onto the floor. Silent sobs, hands shaking, and I held her, rocking her like I did when she was a baby, as if I could protect her from the world outside and the world inside her own chest. It took 30 minutes before she spoke. "When you first saw him," she croaked, "you recognized him." I nodded. He was with you?" She looked at me, eyes wet, devastated. "Auntie, did you love him?" I couldn't lie. Not after everything. "No," I said. I swallowed. "He loved the parts of me that were drowning, not the parts that could swim." She stared down at her hands. "And me?" I held her face. "He loves the parts of you he wants to control." We sat like that for what felt like hours. Finally, she whispered, "What's in the envelope?" I didn't know, but I had been avoiding it for years without knowing it existed. I picked it up, hands trembling. Inside were two things: a photo, my sister, smiling, younger than I remembered, sitting at a cafe table. Next to her, Elias, 16, hair long, eyes softer, face a blend of boy and man, and they were laughing like they shared a secret. And a note, my sister's handwriting, unmistakable, slanted and poetic. It read, "Promise me you'll take care of her." Beneath it, Elias. My niece stared at the note, then at me, then back at the note. She whispered, "He thinks he's fulfilling her dying wish." I whispered back, "He thinks he is God." There was no screaming, no dramatic vow, no heroic plan, just one quiet truth. We had to run. Not physically, not geographically. We had to run from the version of ourselves he had built in his mind. We had to destroy the myth he crafted out of the three of us. We had to become people who did not owe him meaning. My niece wiped her tears, stood and looked toward the door where he was waiting somewhere in the dark. "I'm done," she said quietly, not angry, not broken, resolved. I didn't feel relief. I felt terror. Because men like Elias don't accept endings. They only escalate. She took a breath. "I'm going to tell him," she said, "that I am not her legacy. I am not his second chance. I'm not an answer to a question only he asked." She reached for the door handle. I grabbed her wrist. "No," I whispered. "He wants you to confront him. He wants you emotional. He wants you reactive so he can rebuild the narrative." She looked at me. "How do you know?" I stared straight into her eyes. "Because that's exactly what he did to me." And for the first time since she was a child, she held on to me like I was the only thing tethering her to the earth. And for the first time since the night in that hotel room, I was ready to burn every secret and every memory to protect her, even if it meant destroying myself, even if it meant becoming the villain in her story, as long as she survived her own. People think confrontation means shouting, slamming doors, threats, police, knife fights in the dark. They think evil is loud, but the men who bend your life into the shape of their fantasies are never loud. They ruin you with whispers. So if you want to destroy them, you cannot scream. You must whisper back. We did not run. Running gives the predator permission to chase. Instead, we sat at the kitchen table, my niece and I, still shaking from the revelations of Scene 6, and I told her the truth. He thrives in shadows, so we drag him into daylight. I expected resistance, shock, fear. Instead, she surprised me. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Tell me what to do." That was the moment the girl I raised became a woman. Not because she was ready, but because she was done being prey. Elias's power didn't come from strength. It came from information. He watched, he tracked, he predicted. So we closed every window he had into her life, deleted social media, changed passwords, left her phone off, removed location permissions, called the school counselor to report him professionally intrusive, booked a week off classes due to family emergency. The digital world around her went dark. He wouldn't get notifications, he wouldn't see her online, he wouldn't sense her movement. And most importantly, he wouldn't know what we were planning. Predators cannot stand silence. They need a pulse, a response to anchor their manipulation. So we gave him nothing. No texts, no calls, no updates, no panic, no anger, just absence. The first day was quiet. The second, still. On the third, at 3 a.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. No threats, just 2 words. You're delaying. You're delaying. He was wrong. We were preparing. You don't destroy men like Elias by arguing with them. You destroy them by attacking the place where they believe they are invincible. His myth was simple. I find broken people. I finish them. It makes me their fate. So I went digging. Not in his present. In his past. I found his mother. Not physically. She was gone, as he said. But grief leaves paper trails. Hospitals, church donation drives, palliative care centers, all of them no names. His mother had been under the care of a small public hospice in the outer suburbs. I visited alone, sat across from an old nurse with kind eyes, wearing scrubs the color of dusk. She remembered him, the boy who sat beside his mother every weekend, the boy who didn't talk to anyone, the boy who wrote letters instead of speaking. Letters? I asked. She nodded. He would write pages and pages to his mother while she slept. She held up an imaginary sheet of paper and traced the lines with her finger. Never about school. Never about friends. Always about people he admired. People he admired. Teachers. Mentors. Adults who saw him. Adults who thought they could save him. My sister. And horrifyingly me. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. That night in the hotel bar wasn't a coincidence. He didn't find me. He followed my grief. He saw me collapse after my sister's funeral, the same way he saw his mother collapse into chemo. He waited for the moment I would be weakest, and he offered comfort, not kindness. Access. We didn't confront him as enemies. We confronted him as students. We invited him back. A single message from my niece. "We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe where you first saw my mother." He replied instantly. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. No hesitation, because this wasn't us challenging him. This was him returning to the altar where his obsession began. Not my house, not school, not our family's space, a public place with cameras, people, noise. He couldn't corner us there. We arrived together. I sat in the corner. My niece sat at the center table. He entered with the confidence of a man walking into a church he built. He didn't smile. He didn't ask how we'd been. He just sat and said, "Are you ready to stop running?" My niece didn't flinch. "No," she said. "I'm ready to understand." Like a snake recognizing prey that returns voluntarily, he relaxed. "Good," he said. "I knew you were smarter than she was." She tilted her head. "Which one?" That question cracked something behind his eyes. He leaned forward. "Your mother." "Or my aunt?" she asked. He blinked. Slow, confused. A fracture in the mirror. "I thought you wanted answers," he said. "I do," she said, "but answers to the right questions." She didn't accuse him. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She did something far more lethal. She talked about the future. Not his future. Hers. With words that rewired every neuron in his brain. I'm applying for a research fellowship abroad, she said. A program with mentors. People like her. She pointed at me. And like my mother. Elias froze. He didn't show fear. He showed something much more revealing. Panic disguised as disappointment. You don't need strangers to shape you, he said softly. You already have the path I built for you. My niece smiled. No, she said gently. You built a path for someone who's dead. He inhaled. Slow. Dangerous. You don't understand anything. I understand, she replied, that you're not looking for love or legacy. You're looking for someone who won't leave. His jaw twitched. And I'm leaving, she said. Not loudly, not bravely, just truthfully. That was the scalpel, not the knife. He reached out, reflex to her wrist. I stood. The entire cafe turned toward us. He looked around. Cameras, witnesses, phones. Predators do not hunt in front of an audience. He withdrew his hand, and then I delivered the final blow. Not a threat, not violence, just information. Your mother's hospice kept the letters, I said quietly. He went sheet white. They're archived. Your handwriting, your fantasies, your obsessions with the women who tried to help you. I leaned in, voice like ice. If you ever contact her again, I will publish every page. He stared at me like a man seeing the gun after the trigger's been pulled, not furious, terrified, because we weren't killing his body, we were killing his myth. He stood, shaking, not violently, like a puppet whose strings had finally snapped. He looked at my niece, not with love, with grief, not grief for her, grief for the fantasy she refused to live in. He walked out. No words, no threats, just absence, and absence was the victory. People think survival is dramatic. It isn't. Survival is paperwork, therapy sessions, tight hugs, cooking meals together, deleting photos, learning to sleep again. My niece moved out, not because she hated me, because she needed to own a life that was hers. She sent postcards from abroad, research labs, libraries, lunches with people who saw her as a student, not an unfinished project. Every postcard ended the same way. I'm breathing. I kept all of them, even the ones that didn't say much. Breathing counts as a miracle. As for me, I did not erase the hotel memory. I did not pretend it wasn't real. I gave it a gravestone. I let it die, not with shame, with clarity, because people think monsters break you. But sometimes, monsters make you realize what you will never allow again, and that's how you bury a wolf. Not by stabbing him, not by chasing him, not by screaming. You starve him. You take away the very thing he feeds on. Your fear, your silence, your belief that he is inevitable. You let him walk into the world alone, and eventually he gets eaten by his own hunger.